All right, we now have somebody we're really excited to have on the show today. He's played in many countries. He's had a long career with the U.S. men's national team as well. He's now the chief creative officer for a soccer investment fund, For Soccer Ventures. It is Heath Pearce, the legend. Thanks for coming on today, Heath.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Heath. So before we get into the interview, we usually start out with some quick hitting questions. It's either this or that, or just like 1 or 2 word quick answers. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'm not sure if this first one will resonate with you, but what is your favorite Capri Sun flavor?
Oh man. Tropical something. I can't remember what it is. Tropical cooler or something like that is I don't remember the exact name, but tropical whatever.
That sounds right. Tropical cooler or something like that.
Yeah.
Tropical Tide.
Tropical Tide. That works.
There you go. All-time favorite boot.
Definitely has to be the Mercurial, the R9 Mercurial and the Brazil colorway.
Nice.
Actually, I got one of the originals right up above my shoulder here.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That's sweet. Rate your dancing ability on a scale from 1 to 10.
Just general dancing?
Just general dancing.
Oh, 8 at least.
8 at least?
Yeah.
How much of your day on a day-to-day basis is spent watching soccer?
Is this just between us?
Yes. No one's listening.
At 2 hours plus of like full soccer, but like way more than that if I'm just looking at clips.
Gotcha. Which former haircut do you wish you could bring back?
Oh man. Bleached. I bleached my hair for the first time last year, and I really like that. It's just like it hurts so bad when you have somebody at home do it. So that would be one that I would bring back, but I don't need the pain.
What's the last book you read?
It's a good question. Probably the Charles Bukowski book of poetry that I have. Can't really. I guess you can't see it. Yeah, up there. Yeah, it was a book of poetry. I read it. It was cool. I'm not really into poetry, but that's awesome.
What's your favorite U.S. men's national team jersey of all time?
I mean, naturally, the denim kit is one of my favorites from the olden days, but probably around the 2002 to 2004. That was an era. I can't remember. I can't really describe it, but it was during the time that I was in the youth national teams, and really like it all came to life for me. So it just has a different sort of meaning or value to me.
What do you think about this one right up here?
I like that one. That one. What? Yeah. Sorry, my kids came in. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what year that was, but yeah,
I think that was 2010. I think that was or 2000. I don't remember. It was around 2010. Man.
Yeah, I think Landon Donovan scores the big goal in that.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2010. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that specific. Yeah, I love that one.
My favorite is the one with the white one with the stripe like down. I forget which side it is. That's a classic one.
I'm trying to think when that was too, because I picture Michael Bradley wearing that. I want to say that's like 2008 or 9, somewhere in there, maybe after, but I think that was pre-2010. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Who has a higher ceiling for you in the U.S. men's national team, Gio Reyna or Christian Pulisic?
Gio Reyna.
And my last one here, this is a kind of a tough one. If you could bring one player from the current national team back to play with your national team, who would it be? And who do you think from your national team would complete this current national team if you could bring someone forward in time? Or, yeah, I guess forward in time.
I would say I would add Gio Reyna to my national team, just because the style of player that he is, you could use him in a number of different ways, and obviously his upside is crazy. And then from my national team that I would take on to this one would be, man, good question.
Yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would love to play with this group, right? Like that'd be amazing to play with this group and have to put Serginho Dest on the bench. But no, I would say
you could play left back.
Yeah, left back. He's got to go to right back, dude. Go fight in that depth chart.
Yeah.
Don't take my spot. Go somewhere else. No, if I had to take someone, I would naturally, just out of competition, I would want to see Landon Donovan with this group at Landon Donovan's best to see how he fits in with this. You know, it's so hard to compare eras and generations that it would be cool to see him and how he stacked up against this new generation of players that are just, I think, significantly or at least incrementally better than we've ever had.
So you wouldn't bring Mark McKenzie back to play with you guys? Trouble in paradise there?
No, listen, Mark's got a lot to prove to me to come back to my generation. You know, he's got a lot to prove still, but you know, he is, the national team always had a lot of center backs, you know, and so that's why I'm like, when I take a player forward, I'm like, well, would I take a defender? Would I take a center back to that new group? But I don't know. Yeah, Mark's got a lot to prove to me, man. He's no free passes, no free lunch. Just because we got our podcast going doesn't mean he's getting into my team.
I like that. He's got to get a couple more caps under his belt, right?
Yeah, he's got to get 33 more caps before I start to consider that. And he's got to actually prove to me that he can jump higher than me. If he can do those two things, then he's in my team.
All right, I'm gonna say a title of a YouTube video, and I want you to tell me what it means to you. Tricky dribbling move puts Danny Cruz on his backside.
Oh man. That video is like there's not a lot of things that I'll be able to prove to my kids when they're old enough that I played, like the footage. I'm gonna have to get it like put into 1080p and stuff, but that's the one thing that has literally immortalized me in this sort of like short clip social media era. So what it means to me is just like, yeah, I live forever now.
I have to say though, the cross could have been a little better afterwards. You wish you could take that back and get an assist for that, because that would have really just completed everything.
No, yeah, of course the cross would have been great, but like if this was an and one mixtape, you pick up the ball and you hand it to the guy. You literally pick it up off the ground, you hand it to him. Everybody in the stands has to swarm the field anyway. Everybody has to just run on the field, and everybody's running in circles, going crazy. Like the camera should be shaking. Like that's what happens on the basketball court. So why wouldn't that happen there? The cross is irrelevant at that point. The game is over. Yeah. Everybody swarms the field. We all celebrate, and then like Danny Cruz has to like make a statement. You know,
he's got to retire.
Yeah,
you should have stepped over him, like
Iverson
over Ty Lue, yeah.
You know, it should have just been pushing my hands down over the top of him while I stepped over the top.
Yeah, you just kick the ball out of bounds, give it back to them, just because at that point it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I should have put my hand up like in the air, you know, gone and checked, like kicked it out of bounds and gone and helped him up, like there was like a head injury or something like you see now, and like called up like the bench, the trainer from the other team on, told the ref like stop, sorry, like I could have really made that moment about me. Even more so, and just really and unfortunately that was like a game where I was randomly captain, and we were playing against DC, and we were down, I think we were down 2-0 and came back and won 3-2 in that game. And so it was like it was one of my favorite memories playing with the Red Bulls. It was a big game that day.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get your like old highlight tapes just remastered for TikTok, like get them in 1080p, just put them out there, because I saw the one where you had that one like I don't know, you just hit it by Beckham and then he fouled you, and then that was pretty epic.
It's so funny that's like a highlight, like I got fouled by Beckham, you know, and then it like in the tape too. I didn't make it. It was like my agency at the time that made it. And it's like a replay of 3 times of me like going around Beckham and him fouling me, and then it's like a zoomed in version of it. Like, why would a club be like when they're looking at me potentially like, well, does he have a tape? And then they send it to him and they're like, watch the first one, me getting fouled by Beckham, and they go, let's run that back. Let's see that one more time. But it's in there 3 times as if it like I need to sell that on to somebody. But yeah. I don't know. I'm assuming you can remaster this stuff and upgrade the quality again. I would love to, because there's a few in there that will really sell my competition with Mark McKenzie as to who's a better athlete for sure. If you look at some of those, when I track down Gerard at Wembley and I'm like coming from way behind, like it's insane. It's insane. Like
Alphonso Davies. Huh?
Yeah, you can't teach those kinds of attributes that I had at that point in my life. You know, that's just pure athleticism. That's God-given talent, you know?
Yeah, that's what my game was missing when I was younger. I missed that athleticism.
Yeah, but you can't coach that. Like, you don't. And Mark just needs to accept that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess not to call you old, but like you definitely played in a different generation. back like in early 2000s to the mid 2000s. So with that came like the advent of social media. So how have you seen that progression happen with like players being online, seeing what people are talking about them? Like, can you just talk about that a bit?
I just want to know who prefaces something with, I don't want to call you old. And then that's
directly calls you
old.
Yeah,
that's well, like if he avoided that part, we could just talk about my generation, but he's like, I don't want to call you old. Old, but like,
you're not even that old, to be honest.
It was a long time ago. 36. Yeah. No, I think, on social media, it's interesting because I was kicked out of my club when I was in the Bundesliga. And for like 6 weeks, they were like, they made a statement to the newspaper. It's a tabloid newspaper there. But, for us to understand a tabloid paper is different than the people that live there. That's their newspaper, right? It's the main newspaper there for people that like sports. And I remember thinking like, this was the start of social media at the time. And there was no platform where I could be like, it's one thing to be like, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with social media, right? You can come out and you can say anything that could ruin your life in an instant. In fact, people are just swimming the internet now. And I know I have some enemies. I've seen them recently that accuse me of racism for nothing on the internet, that there's people out there looking to ruin you. And that, they say by the time you're a teenager now, you've already done something that eliminates your ability to become president because you've said something or written something that somebody will find. Obviously, with the last presidency, we know that there's anybody can become president, regardless of what they do. But the responsibility was, I remember thinking about it at that time going, man, I wish I had a platform to make a statement, right? And not have to go, the newspaper makes this big statement because the club has these like internal sources. Heath's done playing here. He's never going to play here again. He's got the wrong attitude and blah, blah, blah. By the way, a month later, I was back in the starting lineup for the team after they made the statement of like, he's done with the club forever. But they made a second statement that was like, oh, his attitude has changed completely. He's like a reformed person. Like he's changed. Wow, what a guy. And like, now you've created this perception for everybody to just decide. There was no two sides to that story, right? There was no ability. And so that's an example of like me wishing that I had a platform where I could say, hey, here's how I'm feeling, or here's what I'm going through, or here's what I think happened or is happening. But then the flip side is that like, after a game or something, or like there's times people tweet at me and I go, oh, here we go. I'm going to get into a fight with this person on Twitter. And then I realized like, man, that is a terrible idea because I'm going to end up like, you can't win. And then you see a lot more harm than good. I think good comes on social platforms now because you can share really, really powerful things that help to change the world. But at the same time, misery loves company.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's any like really bad negatives of players being able to see all these comments and stuff on social media? And does it like affect them mentally through their career?
At a certain point, yeah, I think, especially for this. Look, social media is a really toxic place for young people in general now, right? Like there is a lot of depression that comes out of it. There's a lot of mental health issues that come out of it for young people. Like take soccer aside, it is a very toxic platform, right? If you're a kid that's in school right now and your friends are all like you have this group of friends and you're not getting tagged on post or they're talking about you in the comments and it's about you, like that's a really hurtful thing. And so that's what's happening at the youngest ages, like outside of the game. And then you add that to the game of people who are digital natives, those people that grow up. And if they become footballers, this is the world that they've known forever, right? Which is social media. And so players read that and you can learn to pick and choose what you want to be part of. And, but it's hard not to react emotionally at a certain point because, you come home from a bad day at the office, you train bad, you're on the bench, you're not playing. You go home and you look at social media, or within an instant you can look and the whole world could have something to say to you. You could search your name. There were times in my career I searched my name, see what's being said out there. I've learned to not do that anymore, probably because people aren't talking about me, but also because like if people aren't tagging you on stuff, they're probably saying some cowardly thing that they want to call you out for and get like the low hanging fruit. So yeah, it can be really hurtful for people depending on the state of mind that they're in. Everybody's different in how they handle things differently, but if you catch somebody at a bad time, it could have some really detrimental effects. Kyrie Irving being an example of somebody who talked recently openly in the media about like, things people say, they don't realize that I'm a human and that stuff hurts.
Yeah.
Be honest. Do you have a burner account?
Oh, for sure. I've got so many burner accounts. I've got so many. So I've got them everywhere. Just like a swarm, an army of bots, egg-shaped heads on Twitter that I'm just waiting for one particular person whose name I won't say to attack me again and try to cancel me.
And you're going to gang up on him?
The fury on this person.
Wait, is it just blink twice if this is it Breck Shea?
Oh no, I wish it was Breck. But I don't think Breck knows how to log on to his social account. So no, I wish it was Breck Shea, but no, it's another person that they just suck. That person just sucks.
Player or personality?
Neither. Attempted personality, failed personality, if you will. But like they are the problem with social media and trying to make something about them and draw conclusions to things that are inaccurate. And so, yeah, I've got this army of bots ready to attack. You know, I've got people looking into their tax files to see how much money they donate. You know, when they're out canceling people for the lack of things that they do. I'm building a strong case right now against this person. No, I'm just kidding. All that stuff's not real, or is it?
Yeah. It's like Beyonce. Like whenever there's somebody on the internet, the Beehive just goes and swarms that person and just cancels them. Oh yeah,
go say something right now about Justin Bieber on Twitter and watch what happens. Like Ariana Grande, say something. Watch your life for the rest of your life be attached to a comment you made. They will attack because they're out searching for names, not tags or anything like that. Just literally searching for names and just going after it. So, yeah.
So I mean, when the U.S. didn't qualify for the Olympics, was that like a week ago? There's a lot of things being said on Twitter and whatnot on social media. And like just a lot of blame being thrown around. Do you think that it is one person to blame, or just like or the system as a whole, or what do you see the problem as?
I think there's a lot of problems. I think there has been a lot of growth and change since we failed in 2018. And I think there's a lot of people that are just going, it's the same issue. It's pay to play, right? Or it's you know, it's the pay to play model that is systemically racist against, you know, these are the things that I think are still prevalent, but we are improving some of these things. I think U.S. soccer is building a better plan for the future. I think this was also a circumstance that was hard to prevent, considering that this was probably our C team that was playing in the Olympics. My issue is that C team was talented enough to qualify for the Olympics. And anybody who's been in games of consequence, you could see the body language, you could see the fear, you could see the lack of confidence in this team. Yeah, you could say they're MLS players out of season versus a team that's in season. They're MLS players that haven't played in big games of consequence, but it's still a game, right? It's still a game where you have to approach it in the same way that, okay, say Christ put out a pretty conservative lineup throughout that was more defensive minded to say, hey, we're going to try to navigate this qualifying campaign to get to the Olympics. And then you get to that final game where it just seemed a little fearful, a little bit of lack of risk taking. And I think it is a failure on those players. I think it's a failure on the staff. But attaching a circumstance like that to the larger issues and just saying, we haven't changed, nothing's different, nothing's getting better, I think is a little bit of a stretch to assume that people who think that the U.S. should beat Honduras in that game is a racist sentiment or is elitist. I think is, again, losing the purpose of us having confidence in our U.S. team to be able to win a game against Honduras, regardless of the opponent. We look at them and we say, hey, this is some seasoned pros in this team that have played in big games or at least bigger games and are regularly playing in highly competitive environments. They should be able to compete against Honduras. And the one thing that we always had, at least in my generation in these games, and yeah, there is a missing generation that didn't qualify for the Olympics and stuff, that was always like, hey, CONCACAF is about discipline. It's about heart. It's about taking your chances. It's about courage. It's about these sort of things that are all cliches. But when it comes to qualifying against CONCACAF teams, they will throw everything at you and they will make it very difficult. And you have to meet them on every one of those levels and know that at some point in the game, you're going to get a chance to score. You got to score it. And if you're going to get a second chance, you got to score. And that was the way we qualified in the past for World Cups. And look, is that a perfect recipe to be the best team in the world? No, it's not. That's never going to make you the best team in the world. That's not a recipe for long-term success, but it is a recipe for qualifying for things. And I thought that was lacking on that day. I feel for those players because I don't think it was a lack of effort, but I do think it was a lack of that killer instinct to say it's you versus me. And then beyond that, as individuals, this is a team thing. So if you're my left back and I'm a center back, I know that you're probably going to get beat a few times, but you know what? I'm going to be so dialed in that I'm going to make that next play. And if I have to go make that play and I get beat, who's the next guy that's going to make the play? You know, literally about making plays in those types of games. And yeah, unfortunate goalkeeper error and these types of things, but you know, I still think that, the U.S. With who was available for selection, who was available for being brought into that camp, should qualify for the Olympics. Yeah,
you can't really make an excuse about they didn't have their best team there, because that Honduras team, I think, had USL players in their lineup, or at least one USL player. So you can't make the excuse that the quality wasn't there, because it's still a talented team. It just, you're right. I think it was like a mentality thing. They didn't seem like they were up for it.
Yeah, I made a comment after that game that was like, this is a failure for whoever, you know, I had said, and I had said on paper, this U.S. team should beat Honduras. And that was one of the comments that was accused of being like, look, on paper, this is the whole point, right? Real Madrid on paper should beat Shakhtar Donetsk in the first game of the Champions League. It doesn't always happen that way, right? Like that on paper is an argument, but it's not a, you know, it's a straw man argument. It's not very powerful. But when you look at two teams, it's the same way the bookies build lines on paper, right? They don't go, well, you know, let's roll heart and effort and you know, accountability into our decision making of the betting lines, right? That's how you create these types of things of like who's a favorite, who's an underdog, and so, you know, if you took that on paper and added the things that we just discussed, the intangibles of like effort, fight, one off, like those types of things, you would lean towards, you know, all things equal, the better team on paper winning that, right? If you could match up in all those other areas, and they didn't do that, which I think is a massive failure. But the biggest failure for me is the fact that we as fans now have to live with this scarlet letter of feeling like we haven't made progress since 2018. And for us that work in it, that live in it every day, that scream about it from the mountaintops, that dedicate our our hours of our lives and days, months, and years of our lives to bettering the landscape, have to now listen to the lazy argument that nothing's changed. And that's one of the hardest parts for me as a fan, is that people who haven't been in it, that checked out in 2018, check back in when we fail again and go, oh, it's all the same. It's nothing's changing. Everything is bad. And, you know, everybody that's in it is bad. And that's hurtful, because that progress would help to change the narrative a little bit and help people to look a layer deeper than just like what the low-hanging fruit of the argument is, which is like, U.S. soccer sucks. Everything sucks. Nothing's ever going to change. We're never going to be good. But look through it with a little bit more of a you know, comb through it with a fine-tooth comb to understand the landscape a little better. Sorry, I'm off my soapbox now.
Yeah, it's a lazy take to just say that nothing's changed, because a lot has definitely changed, and you can see clear progress if you look beneath the blanket failures that are really easy to, like you said, it's low-hanging fruit. It's easy to pick at it. But you said you dedicate all your time to kind of changing the landscape in America. So can you talk a little bit about For Soccer Ventures and kind of how you got involved with that, and kind of what your goals are with that?
Yeah, so we launched For Soccer Ventures in late 2019. We were the geniuses that launched a new soccer startup before a pandemic started. But you know, in all honesty, it's actually worked out really great. You know, we've been one of the positive, what we think positive stories during a very hard time for soccer in general in the U.S. But we have two core focuses, on field and off field. With the North Stars being to drive long-term relevance of the sport, make the sport cooler, right? Break into the mindset of pop culture, break into that sort of conversation with the sport off the field, and then on the field to improve the overall soccer experience. So, you know, again, make the experience better. We think that player development is fan development. So those are the two main things. You know, I'm happy to jump into them as deep as you guys want. You know, an example of what we're doing on the field is a recent acquisition of Alianza de Football, which is the largest Hispanic soccer program in the country. This is a program that has traditionally been outside of the U.S. soccer circles, right? traditionally been part of these unaffiliated players, Hispanic players around the country that aren't part of any sort of governing bodies. And our whole goal with this acquisition is to bring them closer to the soccer system, create more opportunities and access for them, to again sort of be the relationship headquarters for soccer, as a neutral relationship headquarters for soccer in the U.S. And that's everything from camps, clinics, programs, to college mentorship programs, to youth and adult tournaments, to, identification camps, things like that. And then our off field is more of a media creative agency. So, for example, we support CBS Sports on their Champions League rights and their Brazilian rights that have come on now, CONCACAF qualifying, these types of things. We help everywhere from, relationship building around rights acquisitions to managing or supporting them on their marketing efforts around Champions League. We run their influencer campaigns around Champions League, things like that, helping them to really understand the soccer fan in the US, right? What a soccer fan means if you're acculturated or unacculturated Hispanic, what it means to be a soccer fan growing up in the culture of California versus Washington, Portland versus New York, and these types of things, of really trying to be the soccer lens for them as an example of what we do, with the goal of being, hey, this is the decade of soccer, right? We know the game's growing faster than we can see it. Going back to our argument about failing for the Olympics, we know that things are going in the right direction. And we want to be a relationship headquarters for anybody from brands who want to get into the space, rights holders, fans, to have a location. So in terms of our podcast, Orange Slices, or Best Soccer Show, really trying to create these subcultures of subcultures and these niche audiences where they can feel like they have a place to belong, both consumer facing and then B2B.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, kind of what we're saying, like when kids are younger, there's an emphasis on winning and doing that, just not instead of just playing the game. So is there anything that For Soccer Ventures is doing to kind of grow the pickup culture of young kids in the US? Because there's like a big emphasis on basketball. Like basketball courts are in every neighborhood and you can just go shoot basketball, but soccer goals aren't everywhere. So is there anything like that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're trying to address, and it's still in the early phases, is you see this huge drop off of participation between sort of 12 and 14 years old, right? And Adidas actually did what was called a swag study at the time that took all the top young players in academies that were part of the ESP program. And the number one, or one of the top traits they all shared was fear, right? Fear of making mistakes, fear of losing, fear of not playing, fear of all these things that are part of the American soccer or American sports culture, which is at a young age, you play to win. And when you play to win, it changes the dynamic of development and joy, and the overall enjoyment of playing the game changes when your goal is always around winning the game and not learning to play the game the right way. Not having, fun comes secondarily to winning, or winning is fun, and therefore that's what you should equate to fun. And so, one, we think that there's a gap in programming. So if you're not an elite player, when there's plenty of elite pathways now, right? But if you're not an elite player, but you're not a rec player, where do you fall in, right? Where it's affordable, where you can have fun, where you can be amongst your peers, where it can be an enjoyable experience, whether that's pickup, whether that's organized, whether, in an affordable way. That's something that we are actively looking at, trying to find a long-term solve for. There's not a magic pill that you can just fix the youth landscape overnight. There is a number of issues, right? That exist. And so, that's one of the examples of something that we've recognized. We don't have the solution for it, but one that we're actively looking at, whether via acquisition or via partnership or via building it ourselves, that we think can be transformational for the soccer landscape and change the culture of the game away from winning to, again, having fun and enjoying the game and developing and playing the game the right way, so that the three of us and anybody else that doesn't make it at the highest level or whatever still loves the game, right? We think player development is fan development. And that's not necessarily the thing in the US. Everywhere else in the world, player development is fan development, right? You stop playing at a certain age. Maybe you play recreationally with your friends, or, I just got off a call where they talked about in the UK, almost everybody plays on a work team there, where it's like, oh, Wednesday, the work team has a 5-a-side team and we need 7 players from whether it's co-ed, men's or women's, that are going to play in this league. And that's a normal thing, right? Whereas that's less so. I think the next generation is going to be the case here. But yeah, it's trying to keep people involved in the game with a love of the game so that the parent doesn't hate soccer because of the experience they have from a pay-to-play model, and the kid doesn't hate soccer because they don't make the A team and their only other option is recreational soccer and all of that sort of stuff. There's a lot of things that won't change overnight, but ones that we have the goal and ambition of having some impact over.
Yeah. So then what you just said, I'm curious, are you playing soccer at all right now? Any pickup games, leagues, or anything?
I was playing the last years when I was living in New York before I moved to California in the Bowery League, which is kind of a really fun, highly competitive soccer league that you have a lot of former pros playing. A lot, like our team had like 8 former pros or national team guys that were living in New York. A number of like ex-college players. A highly competitive, has promotion relegation, so you have a real filter of like good teams, because if you're not a good team, you get battered, you go down to the second division, you don't come back probably. And so that was like the competitive stimulation that I needed out here in LA. I was playing again with a group of, ex-pros, Stu Holden, Steve Nash, Ewan Holden, Spencer Wadsworth, a number of other guys that are in the area that had played on some level just as a fun pickup game Mondays and Fridays. Obviously when the pandemic started, I haven't played since then, but that was one that I was involved in. And I know a guy that I just talked to is trying to bring a 7-a-side league to here from to LA. There's a couple other smaller leagues that exist that would be fun to get involved in again. But with the 3 young kids and whatnot, I try to just find my windows to get that sort of competitive stimulation, a little ticky-tacky, and and then go about my life.
So how good is Steve Nash?
He's very good. He's a very good player. He has a lot. He brings a lot of elements of basketball into the game in the way that he uses his body in tight space. So we play to small goals, right? I don't know. You put Steve on a big 11-a-side at who knows. But in small spaces, he's very good because you're doing a lot of perimeter play. You're doing a lot of passing and moving. You're creating angles in the same way that you would in basketball. So the way you see him use his body to hold people off, to get into spaces, to get around people is really, it's a huge argument for multi-sport participation as long as possible, because the way he sees the game is very unique to most people, especially in small-sided, that I don't see from a lot of the top players that are top soccer players or top pros. And obviously he has a fantastic touch. He could strike a ball both feet, and just, it's really impressive and worth watching if you ever get a chance to watch him play.
Yeah. I would imagine.
Made it. You think you could have made it as a soccer player if you chose that over basketball?
It's so hard because like Steve Nash now, after the injuries that he's had at the age that he's had, but yeah, like his dad is like, I have no idea how old his dad is, but his dad can play. His brother is a professional coach. Like he grew up in the culture of soccer and definitely could have played. If he can, he's a Hall of Fame NBA player.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I would think it'd be ridiculous to think that he couldn't apply that to soccer, considering his build, his athleticism, his true like studious nature of playing the game as well. Because he wasn't like a number 1 draft pick and explosion, right? He was a guy that sort of carved his way and then had just that ability, that cognitive ability to solve problems, and that intelligence would definitely apply to the soccer field.
How tall is he? Is he a big guy? I feel like he's not huge for NBA standards, but he's got to be pretty big comparatively to soccer players.
Yeah, I think he's like low 6s, like maybe 6'1", 6'2", maybe not 6'2", but yeah, somewhere around there. But he's got that. He's just got that, also that physical build where he occupies space really well.
Yeah,
like he's not like he doesn't look like you could look at him and be like, oh, he's 5'9" or he's 6'3". You don't really know. He's just kind of got that athletic build where you can feel and see him around always. He occupies space.
Yeah, I don't know why in my mind I was expecting him to be like below 6 feet, like Messi type, but he played in the NBA, so he's really tall. But so have you ever played pickup with Mark?
No, I haven't. I have not. Oh, it says here Steve Nash is 6'3". There's no way.
6'3".
Wow.
There's no way.
They always
There's,
mark it up. They always mark it up for the NBA
for
guys.
sure. You got to get that. You got to get that those draft dollars. That's why they mark those up. But like, there's no way that he's 6'3". I don't think. You know, he might be. Maybe he's like shrinking. But I haven't played with Mark. No, I want to though. I want to
play some one-on-one. Teach him some lessons.
It's what's so funny is I miss playing one-on-one. That's one of the things of like small goals to small spaces when you know, some of my favorite times were always when you get like 3-4 people, maybe 6 people together and you're playing little tiny goals, moving the ball around, using your body, you know, trying things. I think those are the kinds of things that are the best place to like try things and have fun and enjoy it. And, you know, in the same way that you see, there's these cages all over the world where when I was in London for 2019 for the Women's World Cup, I was in France, but before that I was in London for a month working and there was a cage right outside of my apartment there. And yeah, you just see kids go in there and it was just like, they would just try to navigate like, oh yeah, three boys, girls, good, bad, everybody plays. And you see the good players have the ball all the time. The bad players end up in goal. And like, it was just like a free place where everybody just sort of had fun. Same thing, you know, down in Mexico City, we were filming when the U.S. when Michael Bradley chipped the keeper in last qualifying campaign at Azteca. We were filming down there, so we were in this again, kind of a barrio where they had a little cage, and it was the same thing. They had like everybody, every size, shape, you know, gender playing in these games, and the good players had the ball, and the other ones didn't. They all just teased each other and had fun, and they were having a good time. But there was like. That was like on the ultra low end, but it was a place where it was a safe space to just play the game, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I kind of alluded to it before, but that's kind of what has happened in the U.S. with basketball. You go to any park and there's always a pickup game going. You here really, I mean, not everywhere, but you go to some places and there are pickup games going. But do you see any way to grow that pickup culture in the U.S.?
We need courts. We need like futsal courts, like with the cages like they have in Europe or around the world.
Yeah, I think having the problem with soccer is it is an organized sport in the US now, right? It is drive your kids to something to be part of something organized. It wasn't like, and maybe I don't know what it's like to be a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old now, but like when I was a kid, that was what we did. That was what we played. We went down, we had a piece of grass at the elementary school that all the kids from the neighborhood would meet at, whether it was after school or a random time. If you saw somebody with a soccer ball, it was kind of jump in and play. And maybe that was unique to growing up in the Central Valley of California, where we had multicultural, like ethnically diverse communities where soccer was a thing. But like, you know, that has changed to being like, I sign my kid up for basketball, for soccer, for this. I drive them. They do their hour and a half, and then they go home. There's not like a free play anymore where, you know, you have these locations where you kind of just like help these kids get there and they just sort of navigate it themselves. Right. There's a book called The Danish Book of Parenting that talks a lot about sort of that playground mentality where all of this, so many of the skills that we learn as people are in those moments of playground negotiation, right? Where somebody pushes you off a slide or you get pushed down in a cage, you learn how to negotiate those moments, right? Do you fight? Do you not? Do you go off? Do you like, these are character building things that I think are missing when everything is organized, and the stress and the pressure that goes into organized play, because now parents are spending money. So they're expecting a return on that investment. And it's not just this place where you can go and express yourself and have a good time.
Yeah. That's why it is then the focus is on winning, because it's like becomes an investment. It's like, oh, I'm not going to drive to this tournament this weekend to watch my kid lose. I want to see them win. Yeah.
Yeah. The winning culture here is toxic. I'm doing my B coaching license, and one of the things that it talks about is like, it's not till like U17s that winning becomes a priority or becomes one of the main pillars, right? You don't teach kids to not win, but winning, like win or lose, isn't the main priority before that, right? Competing for sure. Competing is at the youngest age, but like learning and playing the game the right way and freedom to make decisions and express yourself and growth and learning to, you know, different styles of play. Like that is the emphasis versus, winning being the number one priority, which again, in the US soccer system, they're trying to start teaching at a much later date, closer to the way they do in the Dutch system.
Yeah. We actually, one of the guests we had on, Jack Imperato, shout out to Jack. He just signed with the Orange County Soccer Club, but he was over at Valencia in their youth system. Villarreal, sorry. And he was saying like the same thing about how there's when in the youth system, the emphasis is not on winning. It's on about, he said if it was about winning, he would never have seen the field. It's about putting people in and developing people. So
yeah, and that the problem with that is that gets bastardized by people in the US, right? They go, oh, I'm teaching my kids to be soft and not compete and whatever. And that's not what the suggestion is. Like, you telling me that, like, okay, the top of the food chain in Holland is Ajax, right? But all the other kids that play at all the other clubs, like, you think they like losing 8-0? Like, do you think they like getting beat? No, like, it's not about, like, throw caution to the wind and like, you get battered by teams. Like, yeah, you're going to lose some games. You're going to win some games. And you're never not talking about like competing, or the main goal of the game is to score more goals than the other team. That doesn't change. But like having it be where in my youth, every team on game day was lump it to Heath. He's going to run over the top. He's going to get there first because he's faster than everybody, and he's going to score. We're going to win. Right. And yeah, I did have some unbelievable coaches that were training me as a soccer player. But for the most part, I was an asset to a team to help win games. And the pressure of coaches needing to perform because parents want that ROI is high. The pressure of clubs to have an offering to get parents that will pay is high. So what are you offering them, right? Culturally, you now have to, you have to compete. So when you're building a youth model, you have one club up the street from me. You have one club down the street from me. One of them's offering a skills training every week within their package of how much they play. The other one is offering a better player management system. Like all of these things are on like offerings, right? That are part of this whole, like, what do I get when I give you this money? So it's hard to go and tell a parent, yeah, you're going to get all this stuff, but yeah, your kid's probably going to lose all the time. Right. Which is what ends up happening. So they go, you know what? I want my kid to get the scholarship anyway. So I'm going to go to that other club that wins more games, or I'm going to go, because they win more games, I think more scouts will come and watch them. And like this cyclical nature, that's like a vicious cycle that is putting the benefit of the player at the very, very, very bottom, right? It's benefiting parents, benefiting clubs. Clubs then have to compete. The clubs then have to create these offerings that put winning at the forefront. It's just, yeah, like it's really ugly and really detrimental to the kid. The player at the end of it all is the one that leaves the game with mental health issues and they're anxious and they don't know where they fit in.
Yeah. I just have one more thing to add to that, because I think it's funny because you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes, right? So it's funny that is the case for soccer, Yeah,
you would think, but like, we've ingrained these thoughts into being like scholarships and elite, and and clubs have then had to change their whole thing, right? I'm gonna create a mixtape for you so you can get it in front of college coaches. We're going to have these ID programs. We're going to be part of at the league level, the league has these ID camps that then take the best players from those leagues, but you can only go to them if you're part of this league, and that costs money. And then these tournaments, you can only get into the tournaments if you're part of these register or governing bodies for these leagues. And then, you know what I mean? Like it's this like bottom up, top down, like mix that's just really, really toxic. And the only person that gets screwed is the player in the long run.
Yeah. So I want to move now onto your podcast, Orange Slices. Go check it out. They got a lot of great guests, a lot of great interviews. First question about it. When's Christian going to come on?
I don't know, man. He's tough to get. He's tough to get. I'm going to need Mark to pull some magic on that. Obviously it's tough just because he's gone through so much and is in the thick of it at Chelsea. We're talking about Christian Pulisic, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So making sure I was like, man, is he talking about somebody else? Am I missing?
No, my cousin Christian. No.
And so, yeah, we'd love to get him on. Like we were supposed to have Sasha Kleshtin today, but his thing got extended in preseason, so he wasn't able to make it. So like the point is that we want everybody, past and present. We want to establish what the goal of it is first. Like we want to get women's national team players on. We want to get youth national team players. We want to get fans from certain experiences to talk about stuff. But Christian's one that obviously we'd love to get on. He's obviously not the most fun interview. He's pretty
media trained.
Yeah, media trained. He's pretty withdrawn. He's a pretty calm guy as it is, but we'd love to have him on. You know, we try to avoid all of, like, Mark and I try to do the soccer talk, and then with a guest try to make it a little bit more fun and light and kind of nostalgic and kind of memory driven than like a high pressured place where people feel like they can't be themselves. But hopefully we can get him on this year. There's a bunch of guys that from this current crop that we want to get on. We want to get Serginho. We got to get Gio. We got to get Christian. We got to get Daryl DK as well. He's another one that's trending that we want to get him on. But yeah, a lot of guys that we want to get on.
Yunus Musa for
sure. There's all those guys, and that's why. Listen, I am the podcast. Let's be honest, okay, guys. Like, Mark is not the podcast. Mark is the plug. Mark's the plug to the players. Okay,
the player guy.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pulling the weight here. He knows that. I'm pulling all the weight here. He's pulling the weight on booking the guests. But no, it's been a really fun podcast with Mark, and obviously I really respect that Mark is one of these guys at this point in his career on the verge of the national team, but is putting himself out there on a weekly basis on a podcast, right? There's a lot of risk in that. When things aren't going well, there's a lot of risk in people feeling like, oh, you're not focused, or, you know, you have all these other endeavors. It's kind of treading that line, but it's setting him up to be a voice of this new generation, and a voice of authority, and a person that, you know, Mark's been very outspoken on some of the civil unrest over the last 12 months. And the more reps we get with him, the more he becomes sort of that voice for this group, which I think is amazing and creates more of a safe place for his peers to come on and be vulnerable and honest.
Yeah.
How did you guys even get connected in the first place? I'm curious.
So For Soccer Ventures is actually Richie Graham is the founder of it. Richie Graham is the
union guy, right?
Union guy. Yeah. So he was the one that launched YSC Academy. So Mark and Brendan Aronson, obviously the first two guys to really show, you know, when Richie was called crazy 10 years ago by people for putting, you know, his own personal resources into an academy and making it about player development and things that actually matter, when people are like, well, that doesn't work. You know, we've now seen that come to fruition with Brendan and Mark this year as a model that can make a club more sustainable, competitive, that creates the local community with the fans and a number of different other things. So Richie obviously is also the founder of For Soccer Ventures, and therefore that's how we got linked up through Richie and the club, and obviously our natural ties to the union. We saw him being outspoken. We saw his interviews and we were like, hey, this is a guy that we know wants to be in the media space, a guy that's outspoken, a guy that's got to have a huge upside of a career. So we started talking to him and coming up with a few ideas, and we landed on Orange Slices. So it's been a fun journey so far.
Who came up with that name?
Orange Slices?
Yeah.
It was actually myself and a guy named Burke Cherry, who is our chief content officer. We'd been discussing for a long time, like, man, we're entering this era where post 2018 failure, we got the women's team who's on top of the world always because they're so good. But we've seen now through the growth of Major League Soccer that American Outlaws has not dwindled, but because of the failures of 2018, also the growth of local market and Major League Soccer markets, that we want to revitalize this fan base, right? Growing up in my generation, you always supported the national team because that was really all you had access to, right? That was who you knew. You could have Olympics, you had World Cup, and everything else was like a bonus if you got a soccer game on TV. That's obviously changing. People have local market teams, whether they're MLS or lower league teams, and people support them for a number of reasons. People have access to all the clubs around the world. And we were like, hey, this is actually a good time to tap into the nostalgia of Orange Slices, right? people have criticized the US for so long for not having any soccer culture or history, but we do have soccer culture. We do have history. It's very Americana. It's just not British soccer culture history, right? It's not grounded in the Premier League or grounded in the Bundesliga. It's grounded in our own sort of diverse and eclectic soccer history. So we're like, oh yeah, orange slices. That's something people can remember from their youth of eating orange slices, and something that's a memory that we can all share or tap into or understand if we are to say it. So we're like, beyond just a podcast, we want to have social platforms that are celebrating that soccer Americana, that sort of diverse and unique history. And we're also seeing the return of like retro and throwback stuff. And it's just, we think it's a good time to bring everyone back together heading towards the future, which is as bright as it's ever been at the national team level on the men's side. And is like, it's tough to get better on the women's side because it's just literally peak all the time.
Yeah.
It's
Orange
crazy.
Slices and Capri Suns, man. Those were the days, the rec days.
Yeah. See, you guys get it. And like, how old are you guys?
20. I'm 22.
Yeah. See, like, wait, you're 21 and 22?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I would have had you guys reversed, dude. You got a baby face.
Me?
Yeah. You got to let some of that face.
That's, I can't. I can't.
Yeah. But yeah, you get it. Like that didn't go away. Like orange slices is a part of our soccer culture, and it's silly. It's meant to be fun, but like we can all tap in back to those memories of like just being on the grass, or now what is likely turf for most kids, but like that sort of community type of thing. And we think that we can awaken the sleeping giant of US soccer fans. And not just us, but we want to have a location or a destination for US soccer fans to come together and be part of it, whether you're from an older generation or a new generation, knowing that, yeah, look, this national team is nasty, right? The men's side, the women's are best in the world. And the future is looking bright in terms of player development, where it's going to go. Like we want to bring that back to life and be part of that conversation and journey moving forward.
Yeah. So I saw a post on the Orange Slices account. It was of those old shin guards with like the ankle thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Casey Keller wore those his whole career, by the way.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, I had those growing up, and I remember growing up, some people would wear them under the socks or over the socks. When you first started playing, were you over the socks or under the socks guy?
Man, that sounds like a very highly sexualized question. Like you under the socks or over? No, I think I always wore the shin guards under. As I was a pro, I would have the cutoff socks, so I'd have the under socks and then the over sock over the shin guard. Yeah. Because I didn't really like the soccer sock. Never really fit well in my shoe, and was always too thick and too slippery. But yeah. I was thinking about this recently when we had that when I saw that the ankle things, and like Casey Keller, I'm pretty sure played almost his whole career, and like I played with Casey in the national team. Casey was like in the national team through, past I guess 2010, and wore ankle support, like the ankle things. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy. I don't know. Maybe he didn't that long, but I remember him wearing that for quite a while, which is just bizarre to me. Like maybe it's a shot stopping thing, but like, it's kind of like the shin guard theory where in some cases, yeah, if you get hit right on the shin, like it'll protect you, but like, it's not going to stop somebody 2 foot tackling you. Like they're going to get some skin
with the metal studs.
Yeah.
Like exactly. The Union game the other night.
Yeah, exactly.
You see that?
Like, yeah, that was amazing. That guy did a misty flip after the tackle. Pretty wild. That was nuts. But yeah, like those are the kinds of things that you look back and you go, wow, that's crazy, man. Like that's I remember on that like soccer nostalgia, I remember getting my first pair of Puma Kings, and a guy said, hey, listen, if you can soften this kangaroo leather by boiling water, make that leather really soft, and then you put your foot in there and it'll like conform to your foot. And I remember finally having these Puma Kings and putting them in boiling water, and then the boot just separating from the actual cleat part and the shoe, and like they were ruined. And it was, I finally got there because I remember that being the thing of like how you can like polish the leather and like the soft touch of the K what's called K leather now. But yeah, like those are the kinds of things from back in the day that I think about, like those kinds of shin guards. I remember asking for one of my birthdays, I played goalkeeper till I was like 12, with like half in goal and half on the field. And I remember asking for like a glove bag for my goalie gloves. And like, I would want like a goalie shirt. And I'm just like, those are the things I go back to. And I'm like, oh, these are like kind of like Polaroid memories in my brain of like things that were like, man, remember, it's kind of like the old cliche of like, remember when life was simple, remember when life was easy. Like, that's what it was. Like, you think about that and I'm like, man, I've got millions of those memories of being at youth tournaments and having fun and being with my friends and whatever. I was obviously fortunate enough to make it as a pro, but for all my other friends, like at a certain point they dropped off, and very few of them like soccer where I'm from. And they're like sons of, Middle Eastern, Mexican, Portuguese immigrants that like culture is in their family and in their house. But for some reason, they just fell out of love for a lot of the reasons we've discussed today.
Well, now you got your kids to live through. Are they going to be playing soccer?
If they want to.
Yeah.
And once I make them.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, they've shown some interest. I think for me, the main thing that I try to do is, I have soccer on TV. Like one of your first questions, I when it's on, I put it on, and they hate it. They don't want to watch. There's a lot more fun shows they would rather watch, but like
SpongeBob.
Yeah. They're not quite to SpongeBob yet. I think there's some subject matter that my kids, my oldest one is 4.5. So we've got to get a couple years before SpongeBob. But like, yeah, the main thing is just like understanding, that the game and respecting it. Right. And then they go and play it. We go and play it in the backyard for a little bit, or we go and play it at the park, or they kick a ball around. Like, those are the little things that I just want to like sprinkle little bits of soccer culture in their life and let them figure it out. Like, I don't want them to be, hey, you got a game, you have to go to this and whatever. I want it to be more of like introduced to them in a way that eventually becomes part of their, their ecosystem and something that they know about or like or don't like, but at least it's around and they respect the game.
Yeah. All right, Heath. Well, thank you for joining us today. Where can our listeners go and listen to Orange Slices, and what are your like social tags and everything?
Yeah, so we are at Slice of Soccer on social media. Orange Slices is the name of the podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts from. And you can follow me on social at Heath Pearce, which is the same across all social platforms. I recently told somebody that I had to give a few jerseys to get those to get Heath Pearce across everything.
Oh yeah.
I had to do a little exchange to somebody who was also named Heath Pearce, but they were a cool person. And they gave it to me for just a few signed jerseys. So that's it.